NHRA Today, Sports Sundays on TNN.
It was a cool, windy day in Watkins Glen, New York this past weekend for the Budweiser at the Glen. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside Winston Cup Racing. That's where we are. There was a lot of excitement here this past weekend. Some drivers had some troubles negotiating the turns here. We'll have all of that for you and more. Here's what's coming up on this edition of Inside Winston Cup Racing.
There were tears of joy for Ernie Irvin and his Kodak Films crew as they picked up their second victory of 1991 in the Budweiser at the Glen. But there were also some mixed emotions in victory lane as veteran Winston Cup campaigner JD McDuffie lost his life during the event. We'll pay tribute to JD coming up.
Rougemont and Bob Rahilly have had several drivers pilot their cars around the NASCAR speedways, one of which was Joe Ruttman. After a 2-year layoff, Ruttman has returned to RahMoc Racing, and the team appears to be building momentum. Ruttman, Mock, and Rahilly evaluate their performance.
And Jimmy Hensley continued to beat the odds last week as he drove his sponsorless Oldsmobile to a third checkered flag of the BGN season. You'll see how he lapped the field in the Texas Beat 300 in Rougemont, North Carolina.
Today's show is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Miller Genuine Draft, cold filtered for real draft taste. So get out of the old, get into the cold. By Goodyear, maker of the world's most successful tires, the Goodyear Eagles. And by Kodak Gold Film, the official film of NASCAR.
One manufacturer has more NASCAR victories than anyone. More NHRA Pro Stock victories than anyone. More consecutive IMSA GTO victories at Daytona than anyone. And more off-road victories in the last 5 years than anyone. That manufacturer is Ford. No wonder nobody enjoys the weekend like Ford.
All of these championship-winning drivers have one thing in common: Goodyear Racing Eagles. The race-winning technology that's found in the Goodyear Racing Eagles can also be found in the world's best-selling line of high-performance street tires, Goodyear Eagle Street Radials. The champions know, and it's why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
We'll roast out here. We're 1,000 miles from anywhere. Is that a ship? No one will save us.
3 Miller Genuine Drafts.
Cold filtered Miller Genuine Draft. For those who've discovered its real draft taste, the world is a very cool place.
I'm gonna stop my crying, I'm gonna leave you alone.
Put some blues in your country, Texas style, with Leroy Parnell, Gatemouth Brown, and Delbert McClinton.
Got a master's in a rhythm and a minor in soul. PhD in the blues.
Lone Star music with a pumped-up beat.
All it takes is a tender moment.
The American Music Shop, Thursday on TNN, the Nashville Network.
What it needs is a tender.
One week ago today, a void was created in the sport of Winston Cup racing. For JD McDuffie, the Budweiser at the Glen was just another race. Unfortunately, it was a race he'd never finish. John Delphus McDuffie was known to the racing world simply as JD. JD lost his life in a tragic accident in the early laps of the Budweiser at the Glen when his number 70 Pontiac lost a wheel entering turn 5, the fastest part of the course. He careened into a tire barrier, killing him instantly. In 653 Winston Cup starts, JD never won a race. He and his familiar Rumple Furniture Pontiac never secured the funds to compete at the front of the pack in the high-stakes world of Winston Cup racing. Yet he loved to race. Frequently, drivers, mechanics, and fans would all contribute to his cause. The question was asked of JD many times, why do you do it? He did it because he was a racer. Back in 1971, as a young 12-year-old race fan, I was fortunate enough to witness JD register his best Winston Cup finish ever when he was third in the Malta 100 at my home track, Albany-Saratoga Speedway. To me, JD was a true hero then, and still is today. And it was fitting that on Saturday evening, prior to the Watkins Glen event, he found his way to victory lane in a celebrity race at Shangri-La Speedway in Oswego, New York. Quoting from Winston Cup driver Brett Bodine, JD was someone who loved the sport so much that he invested his whole life in it. And ultimately, he did invest his life in it. JD and his family didn't have much, but they had a race car and they went racing. JD was 52 years old. From all the staff here at Inside Winston Cup Racing, we offer the McDuffie family our deepest condolences.
Today's Winston Cup highlights are brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately?
After a 1 hour and 48-minute red flag condition, the drivers returned to the track to do what they do, to race. And they did. Terry Labonte, the pole sitter, gave up the top spot to Ernie Irvin as he had a tire going down. He eventually looped it in turn 1 and would later retire with engine failure on lap 47. Ernie paced the pack for 39 laps, pushing his Kodak Chevy through the left and right-handers with precision. The same which couldn't be said for several competitors. Brett Bodine escaped contact when he also spun in turn 1. Bobby Hillen had trouble negotiating turns 6 and 7. Likewise for Wally Dallenbach Jr., who ran as high as 4th before his steering broke on lap 58. But even Ernie couldn't keep his car on track the entire distance. On lap 48, while leading, he spun off the course and lost 5 positions. Ricky Rudd and Rusty Wallace then raced out front with Sears Point winner Davey Allison and Mark Martin managing to keep the 2 in sight. In all, 9 different drivers showed the way, including Kenny Schrader. But Schrader's Chevy broke a camshaft with 22 laps remaining. He ended up finishing 30th. Dale Earnhardt had a disappointing day after being black flagged twice. First for jumping the restart, then for going too fast down pit road. Dale would finish 15th. The 6th and final caution of the day was brought out by Kim Campbell and the Napa Moroso Olds. And that set the stage for a typical Ford-Chevy confrontation, this one between Mark Martin and Ernie Irvin. Mark sized up Ernie over the final 20 laps as Davey Allison watched from a distant third. And on the white flag lap, Mark made his move in turn 1. But there was not enough room to take the advantage. As he spun, Allison did the same in an attempt to avoid him. Mark recovered to finish 3rd. Allison recovered to only finish 10th behind Richard Petty. Irvin took the checkers 7 seconds ahead of Rudd. Bill Elliott and Hut Strickland battled to the wire for 7th, but bumped and crashed at the finish line. Elliott took the position. The victory was Ernie's 3rd overall and 2nd of 1991.
You know, we had a whole grandstands full of people down there in turn 2, and they all got to see all them guys spin in the last lap, and you know, it was like, I don't think I can screw this last lap up with nobody on the same straightaway. And I still missed a gear. So, you know, I am not no road racer. I just happened to luck out.
Ernie, along with tears of joy for you, of course, tears of sorrow for JD McDuffie and his family. It must be a difficult time as well.
Man, it is. You know, JD was a big part of our sport and will always be. And, you know, he was the guy that never got the big sponsor and was the guy we always wondered how he came to the races. And, you know, I'm going to bring one of the guys home in my plane tonight and just get everybody back to Charlotte area in time to take care of the things they have to take care of. But, you know, JD was a big part of the sport, and it was hard to drive by turn 5 every time. And, you know, knowing what happened and, you know, when we went by the first time, it didn't look good, and it took him about an hour to really tell us, the drivers, what had happened. But, you know, he won his last race, and, I guess if JD wanted anything good, he wanted to win, and there was no more dedicated racer than JD McDuffie.
A memorial fund has been set up for the McDuffie family. If you wish to contribute, you can do so by sending donations to the following address. The JD McDuffie Fund, care of Mrs. JD McDuffie, 3612 Baker Drive, Sanford, North Carolina, 27330. Or to Rumpel Furniture Company, 1313 North Bridge Street, Elkin, North Carolina, 28621.
How hot can it get inside your car's engine? 570 degrees under extreme conditions. Take a leading motor oil. Take Mobil 1. Of course, Mobil 1 costs more. But under extreme conditions, when you see what can happen to conventional motor oil, it doesn't pay to play with fire. Mobil 1. Isn't your car worth the extra protection? Rick Mears and Mobil 1 finished in the winner's circle at the Indy 500. Mobil 1, the choice of champions.
When we set out to engineer the ultimate spark plug, we put in a lot of long hours. We utilized a lot of revolutionary thinking. And all the while, our competition thought we were just shooting for the moon. Unfortunately for them, we shot a bit higher than that. Bosch Platinum, the ultimate spark plug.
To locate a Bosch retailer or service outlet, call 1-800-882-8101.
As far as the way you communicate music, I think that is just something that comes natural. I've been singing since I was 8 years old. I tried to sing a song with a lot of emotion.
I thought that he walked on water.
I like a song that's almost a novelty type song sometimes, kind of an off-the-wall view of things. To me, Digging Up Bones was that kind of a song. And I also like a song that has a real good message, like Forever and Ever Amen. If you can find one of those, I'd put it on every album.
Oh, darling, I'm gonna love you forever.
I thought it was great for country music when the network began. And it's been a great success because it continually grows.
As long as a woman said, here's a quarter, call someone who cares.
Hey, don't shortchange yourself, Travis.
Play me a country song.
That's what George would do, Alan.
I am a simple man.
Simple? Not the entertainer of the year. Video PM. It's not just the music, it's who makes the music. Video PM, 5 p.m. Eastern, only on TNN.
The RahMoc organization fields the Dinner Bell Oldsmobiles that Joe Ruttman drives in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Now, Ruttman had driven for that team back in 1982, and then he left and went on to other things, and then was out of the sport for a couple of years before being reunited with them in 1991. Now, it has taken them a while to get adjusted to each other again.
RahMoc Racing has had its share of drivers over the years, 20 to be exact, and for Joe Ruttman, this is his second time around with the team that was developed by Butch Mock and Bob Rahili back in 1978. The three teamed up for 23 races back in 1982, 3 more in 1987. And while the RahMoc team continued to search for the right driver in their quest for success on the circuit, Ruttman found himself out of racing at the end of the 1986 season after losing his ride with Kenny Bernstein. And today, they're together again.
You got to be careful, and I think what happened to me early in my career in Winston Cup is I made a couple of wrong moves, and that really fixed me up. And if it hadn't been for Butcher and Bob, the start of this year, I felt that I was out. There was no question. They were probably one of the few teams that I could have ever driven for. And, I've just got to thank them and Dinner Bell and Food Lion for saying, hey, give this guy another chance, because I positioned myself incorrectly years before, and that's what got me in trouble.
Ruttman finished in the top 10 14 times in 1986. Twice he was second, but nonetheless, he was fired from the Quaker State team.
It was probably the first time that I'd ever been canned, and it was kind of a devastating moment in my life. And so I said, well, I can end that problem. I'll just own my own car, and that'll never happen again. If I want to quit, I'm going to quit. I won't fire myself. And so that's what made me do that move. And what happened was I spent, approximately 3 years trying to establish that unsuccessfully. And so it dawned on me that when I come around the races, everyone says, well, what are you doing since you've quit? And I go, well, wait a minute, I haven't quit. But everyone assumes that if you don't come around that you've quit or retired or whatever. And so I realized at that time I was in real trouble, and maybe never ever to race a Winston Cup car again.
At the conclusion of the 1990 season, RahMoc was searching for a driver to replace Rick Wilson. And Ruttman got the call, but it wasn't without warning.
I told him when we first hired him back this December, I said, it's been about 2 or 3 years since you ran all the races, and a lot of young guys that come along, and they're going to wear you out a little bit. And he says, oh, I can handle them. And he's learned. He says, boy, them guys are real tough. He says, you got to run every lap like it's the last lap now. But he's doing good. The first, some of these tracks he hadn't been to in a couple of years, and that's all behind us now. And we're starting to really see some improvement.
Joe was able to jockey his way to a 5th place finish in the season opener at Daytona, but he admits overall it is a little tougher than it used to be.
We took off a little too good at Daytona and probably got my confidence a little too high, but I guess you can never have your confidence too high, but it's knocked me down a notch or two, and maybe in the long pull that probably knocked me into realization that, hey, I got to dig a little bit harder.
Besides getting back into the groove as a driver, the whole team has had to contend with a change from rear steer to front steer cars. They did it right in the middle of the season in hopes that they could complement their engine program.
We've had really a flawless year motor-wise. Our motor program's been excellent all year. We haven't lost any motors. And we made a transition. We've been running rear steer cars all of our career. About 3 races into the season this year, we decided to change. Those are things you normally do over the winter. We've made major strides, just really in a very short period of time. We had not tested them. We had never raced them. And really, all of a sudden, things are coming together with them, and so we're excited. Those are things you're supposed to be doing over the winter. We felt what we were doing was fine, but I think the rear steer car was non-compatible with the radial tire. We made that decision after Rockingham, and we swapped, and so we've been on a major learning curve here in just a very short period of time.
As the team continues in its learning curve, they are still confident that Joe is the right man for the job.
I told you, and I told Joe, I said, for some reason, I've had more fun this year racing than probably any year in my career. And I think that part of that's due to Joe. There's no pressure on either one of us. He's very appreciative to be here, and I'm glad to have him, and we're just having a good time.
I think this time around, I probably come with a different attitude, and they see that, because now it's like, this is my last opportunity. And before, I knew that I had a lot of other opportunities, so maybe that's what they see in me. They realize that hey, this could be the last hurrah, and they know I'm giving 110%. And sometimes that gets you in trouble because you try maybe too hard. But am I optimistic? Yes. Am I still feel confident inside I can win a race? Absolutely. And I know that we can win a race as a team. And the opportunity is going to have to be in our favor. Naturally, we're going to have everything going right for us. But that's the thing that really keeps me on the upbeat side.
Certainly the RahMoc team knows how to win because they won with Neil Bonnet when he drove for them, and Ruttman seems to be a capable driver. Now here's this week's Kodak photo finish.
Brought to you by Kodacolored Gold 100 Film, the truest, most accurate color of any print film. Show your true colors on Kodacolored Gold Film, the official film of NASCAR.
A packed house watched Dale Earnhardt and Kenny Schrader race for the finish line at the Checker 500 in Phoenix last fall. Earnhardt led the last 261 laps, including the one that mattered the most, edging Schrader by half a second and solidifying his hold on the top spot in the chase for the 1990 Winston Cup Championship.
world gets more colorful every day, Kodak introduces a more colorful film. New Kodak Gold 400 film. It now has the richest, most saturated color available in high-speed film. New Kodak Gold 400 film.
Ford Trucks. The best never rests.
Look, everybody knows our full-size pickup's priced less than Chevy, right? Mm-hmm. That's just for starters. This study shows the F-150 will cost less to operate. And look, it'll hold its value better than Chevy. It's more than a good truck. It's a good investment.
More people are driving the best-built, best-selling American trucks than ever before.
Where can you go on Goodyear Wrangler radials? So where can you go on Goodyear Wrangler radials? Just about anywhere you want. Put on a set of Goodyear Wrangler radials, and you'll know why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Filtered Miller Genuine Draft. For those who've discovered its real draft taste, the world is a very cool place.
Set 'em up, Joe, and play walk on the floor. Set 'em up. He's nicknamed The Voice. Vern Gosden stars on stage at the Ryman Tuesday on TNN. Set 'em up, Joe, and play walking.
The Watkins Glen International Raceway is nestled in the hills of New York State. Next week, we'll be in the Irish Hills of Michigan. We'll be there to bring you all the action from the champion Sparkplug 400.
And we'll huddle up with Dale Jarrett and Washington Redskins head coach Joe Gibbs as they prepare to team up to tackle the Winston Cup circuit in 1992.
And you'll meet a few of the folks that put the Winston Cup action into your newspapers and magazines. The army of photographers that travel the Winston Cup circuit capture memorable moments with the click of a shutter.
The NASCAR Busch Grand National drivers were in Rougemont, North Carolina last Saturday for the Texas Pete Sausage 300. Jimmy Hensley has run awfully good in most of the races this year, but he's had a lot of trouble along the way. But trouble avoided him last Saturday afternoon in Rougemont.
Points leader Kenny Wallace got his first pole of the season with a speed of 95.057 miles per hour. The field of 30 took the green flag as Wallace and Jimmy Hensley took command. By the end of the second lap, Hensley took his still unsponsored Oldsmobile into the lead and started to pull away. Some action further back as Ward Burton was beating on his old car, now driven by Butch Miller. The first caution came out on lap 10 for Cecil Eunice, who'd parked his car along the turn 1 wall. A unique story developed as Chuck Bound wrecked his car in practice, suffering a torn up front end after an oil line break. He qualified 18th, but was constantly on the move. On lap 39, rookie David Green passed Bobby Labonte for third. Kenny Wallace had been pressuring Hensley and took the point back on lap 56. Just a few laps later, Elton Sawyer and wife Patty Moise had a falling out of sorts, causing caution number 2. There was a great battle for 6th between Todd Bodine, Robert Presley, Jeff Burton, and Chuck Bound. Bound eventually got the spot. The third yellow flag flew when Robert Presley spun out by himself. Tommy Houston and Shauna Robinson got involved in the aftermath. On lap 125, Chuck Bound continued his assault when he passed Jeff Gordon for 4th. 2 laps later, caution number 4, as Joe Nemechek, Tommy Houston, and Ward Burton tangled in turn 4. Just past the halfway point, Bound's Nescafe Pontiac passed David Green for 2nd. On lap 174, Bound was in front of everyone, a lead he held for 76 circuits. Rookie Jeff Gordon got loose in turn 4, but regrouped and kept going. Steve Grissom was having a good run after starting 22nd. He eventually wound up finishing the race 4th. 49 laps remaining, and Jimmy Hensley was back in 2nd. On the next lap, he dove low underneath Chuck Bound and into the lead for good. Shauna Robinson brought out the last caution with this spin. As everyone pitted, Hensley's lead got padded. He wound up winning the race by a lap and a quarter for his 3rd victory of the season.
Today's mailbox is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft.
And our question this week is from our voicemail box from Donald Holloman from Mansonia, Connecticut.
I would like to know what the generators are that they have hooked up to each car when they're sitting on pit road prior to startup.
Donald, thank you for calling in and asking this question. A lot of people have asked me this before, that the generators that you see sitting out on pit road hooked up to the cars is for the engine men that like to have the oil warmed up before each race. They think the oil temperature needs to be a certain temperature, and they don't like to start off with just regular cold oil because it just makes it a little thicker. And by heating up the oil, it thins the oil down, and it's a lot better on the engine bearings.
If you have any race questions, you can write to us at Inside Winston Cup Racing, Box 240417, Charlotte 28224. Or you can now call us at 1-900-84-RACES. Charge is $1 per minute, average call 2 minutes. Fans 18 and under, get your parents' permission before calling. If we use your question on the air, you'll receive this embroidered Miller Genuine Draft jacket free. Fans 21 and under will receive an IWCR cap and t-shirt.
Well, our time's up for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. They had to have a record crowd here this past weekend at Watkins Glen, but we got to move on to the next race, and we'll see you here next week on TNN.
Today's show has been brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer. Winning the world over with 1991 trucks that are built Ford tough. By Miller Genuine Draft, cold filtered for real draft taste. So get out of the old, get into the cold. By Goodyear, maker of the world's most successful tires, the Goodyear Eagles. And by Kodak Gold Film, the official film of NASCAR. Inside Winston Cup clothing provided in part by Sports Image Incorporated, suppliers of quality racing apparel. Communications for Inside Winston Cup Racing crew provided by Racing Radios, Forest Park, Georgia, the official communications of NASCAR. Transportation for Inside Winston Cup Racing provided by Fleetwood Enterprises, makers of a full line of excellent recreational vehicles. And by your Carolina Ford dealers. Nobody outsells Ford in the Carolinas.